I used to have a t-shirt that said, "For thousands of years, the hours between dark and sleep were spent in community together, telling stories." I've always loved a good story. As a child, I was fascinated by the stories of others, the ones I read and the ones I heard. I heard and accepted the stories my parents told me about our family and the people we knew. Stories were told at the dinner table, mostly. Commenting on a phone call or a letter from a relative, I could tell my parents' expression or tone of voice how they felt about them, which, of course, influenced my attitude towards them as well. They were adding to the story I'd already heard. The first book I was assigned in seminary was The Truth About Stories, a Native Narrative by Thomas King. King, a Native American writer, started every chapter with the same story and then tells his truth from his life experience that correlated to that story. King uses this device to show that stories are wondrous things, and they're dangerous. They're dangerous because stories change who we are and how we understand and interact with the people and the world. We grow up with a story which shapes us. The first ones we hear and unconsciously assimilate is the story of our family, the hardships, the triumphs, who and what we love and avoid, and where we live and came from matter to who we are, and how the church we attend and the groups we associate with and the work our parents do label who we are. As we grow, we start to compare ourselves to our friends, relatives, and neighbors' stories to try and figure out what that says about us and where we fit into our immediate community. We start to look at other ways of being in this world, and we meet new people who have had different experiences and backgrounds. We begin to see new possibilities and wonder if we could become that too. Sometimes when we start to push too far outside of where our family felt comfortable living, they become afraid that we're reaching too far to become something that they couldn't see for themselves, for their own story. They've built a story that they have accepted, and sometimes we feel the need to escape the story they wrote for us. So our first story is created for us. But as we age and come into contact with more people, teachers, ministers, friends of your parents, or mentors who take an interest in you, new ideas and possibilities come up. People we associate with and those we date and marry have a great impact on our story too. And we become comfortable shaping our story as we go along. But we become selective about the stories we tell, especially when we're dating someone new or applying for a job. Meeting people at a party or at a new job can find us editing our personal information as we go. My acting teacher, Rolf Brandis, used to say, "There's a different me that walks into a funeral or walks into a McDonald's, a job interview, or in the middle of a contentious meeting." Some of the ways that we present ourselves or approach these different situations based on our former life experience. These are unconscious sometimes, or we consciously choose them. But we consciously decide in those times how much and which parts of our story we tell. And as we become more comfortable with new people, we reveal more and more of our story. As our lives go on and we become very comfortable and sometimes resigned to who and we are and how we got here, But I'd like to challenge that. Is the story you wrote with the help of your friends, family, employers, and even adversaries, is the story all true? America is the land of reinvention. No one is surprised when Colonel Sanders reinvented himself in his 70s and became known for his famous chicken, other than his former failed enterprises. He is only one example, and I'm sure you can think of many others that you've known personally. Who you are and what you've become is sacred. Our stories are sacred, and it's a privilege to hear them shared. I've always been so impressed when a minister who does not know the deceased can give such a thorough eulogy that left me knowing my late friend better, and sorry that I didn't know the details before they died. And yet, the eulogy was told by friends and family to the minister. That was their story of the deceased. I imagine that if asked, the person who died would have highlighted other parts of their story, the parts that they thought were important and were true to their vision of themselves. Have you ever been surprised by the way someone you know has described you? They list qualities you may not have recognized in yourself. They may see you as kind, resilient, curious, extravagant, loquacious, or generous. Or on the other hand, they may see some of the undesirable qualities, ones you hardly recognize. That's when you ask a trusted partner or friend you know well, who will tell you the truth and see if this is true. Do you add that to your story or reject it? It's never too late to look at who we are and decide if that's who we want to be. Thomas King discusses the Nigerian storyteller Ben Okri, who says that in a fractured age, when cynicism is God, here is a possible heresy. We live by stories. We also live in them. One way or another, we are living the stories planted in us early or along the way. Or we're living the stories we planted, seemingly, knowingly, or unknowingly in ourselves. We either live stories that give our lives meaning or negate it with meaninglessness. If we change the stories we live, quite possibly, we change our lives. But to change them, we must recognize and acknowledge them and the things we say about ourselves. Sometimes it means stopping the negative talk and emphasizing good qualities. And this isn't just Pollyanna thinking. When you accept the negative qualities others have labeled you, it helps to ask yourself if it's true, and then to say, this will no longer be a part of my story. I'm writing a new chapter. Or to accept the good qualities as part of your story. Either way. Stories are sacred. They grab at an essence of ourselves and the people around us. Our stories are holy, and let us bring who we are and who we choose to be fully into our lives. Live your story. The one you've written to this point and the one you will write going forward. And as Thomas King says, the truth about stories is that's all we are. Our stories. What will you write into your life in the days to come? To the glory of life.